Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Antonia, and here on my channel I discuss everything pretty much crafting and DIY that I've been up to. Usually it's just knitting, but actually today I haven't recorded a video in a while, so I've got a bunch of updates on other activities like sewing and crocheting that I've been up to, along with a bunch of whips and finished objects from all of the knitting projects I've had going on. So I guess I might as well start off with what I'm wearing today, which is one of my finished objects, which this is my sweater number 14 v-neck by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I actually knitted this using a yarn that I got at Michael's. It's the Lion brand Woolly's Roving Origins yarn. So the label kind of looks like that. And this is the actual first time I've ever used a unspun or roving wool. And they come in really large, like 150 gram size skeins at the store. So I think I only needed 3 for this whole project. I might have barely dipped into a little bit of the 4th one to do some of the ribbing on the cuffs. But overall, I did really like this a lot. It kept me really warm, and I used the color Lilac, which I think is just such a nice springy kind of color, even though it's a pretty warm sweater in and of itself. I'm like overheating a little bit just wearing it right now in my room, but I just think that it's really cute with like the lacy v-neck underneath, and it kind of has a nice spring vibe, so I like it a lot. One thing that I didn't expect using the unspun yarn was I'm kind of like a huge fan of like an Italian or tubular bind off in some way, and I don't think I've really bound off anything in recent history that has had rib at the bottom that I didn't do some kind of Italian bind off for. But I found that just like dragging the darning needle with the unspun yarn in and out so many times, I was having a lot of issues where it was just snapping and stuff. So I gave up in the end, and I just did like bound off in rib, like knit over knit, purl over purl, whatever you call that. And honestly, I feel like it's kind of tricky for me to do that thing where you finesse the 2x2 purl to go in an Italian bind off or tubular bind off anyway. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't, from what I've found, but I do think that overall this does look pretty good, and I might even prefer it just for this project more than if I had gone through those extra steps and suffered through doing the Italian bind off. So I'm glad I made that executive decision before I lost my mind too much trying to cast this off. And yeah, there weren't a ton of projects on Ravelry using this yarn yet, so I thought it was kind of nice to be able to add something there for people to use as a frame of reference for if they want to do other projects using it and to kind of see how it holds up. So yeah, I've been having some pilling in the back, especially kind of like where I sit. I know that if yarn isn't really spun at all, it doesn't have that integrity to kind of keep the fibers close together, but it doesn't have any obvious signs of wear and tear or anything yet. So super happy with that. The next finished object that I have, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my last video or not, but for my birthday this year, my mom got me the 52 Weeks of Socks book, which I was so excited about, and I was totally obsessed with going through and finding which kind of sock patterns I want to try out from this first, and I haven't gotten any more sock yarn since my birthday, since I got gifted this book. So I was mainly working with what I had in stash already, and something I had was Sandnes Garn Perfect, which is a DK weight sock yarn. So I decided to make some riverbed socks. So yeah, these are the riverbed socks by Joji Locatelli, I believe. This book kind of just has like a collection of many different designers in here, so kind of nice that you get a different perspective on different ways that people construct their socks. And it's pretty interesting because they've got kind of like a purl base everywhere, where normally you would kind of have a knit and then have the design on it or whatever. So I kind of like the way that it's purl where your actual foot is and everything, because some people find it a little uncomfortable to feel the purl side bumps on their feet like as they're walking when they have handmade socks, and especially because they are DK weight, so they're a little bit more chunky in that regard. I could definitely feel like that might bother me. So because you have the knit side facing where your actual skin is touching, I feel like that's so much nicer to make it a little bit more comfortable. And even though they're kind of thicker socks, they are a little bit shorter in the leg part, so they're not like too hot to wear. Although honestly, I haven't worn them a ton since I finished them because it is, you know, almost June now, so there hasn't really been a ton of cold weather that would warrant me wearing huge thick wool socks, but I think they're really cute and I've been liking them a lot. And this is just in the moss green color of Sandnes Garn Perfect. So yeah, which I feel like is such a nice, kind of simple, classic, woodsy kind of sock yarn to have, especially being called riverbed and stuff. I feel like this is very giving kind of like mountain nature kind of vibe. So I really like these, and I hope that I can get a chance to wear them a little bit more before it gets unbearably hot. So fingers crossed for that. Coming up next in kind of the exact same colorway is my blouse number 1 that I made. And in a funny turn of events, I think that this colorway is also called moss green. And if you hold it up next to the socks, they're a little bit, like I think that the Sandnes Garn Perfect is definitely a little bit more vibrant than the blouse number 1 yarn. This is Drops Belle in moss green. So I feel like the Drops Belle, and that means it's like not even the same yarn brand, like completely different brands, and both of their moss greens are so similar that they're barely indistinguishable. But this is how it looks. I do really like the drape that this yarn had. Usually I'm not a huge fan of cotton yarns or kind of those kind of summer plant fibers because they're kind of awkward on the hands when you're actually knitting with them, and they kind of make like a weird, they drape not like I really enjoy, and the stitch definition is kind of weird, like they'll be inconsistent across, like I find it difficult to have a consistent gauge and have my stitches look very uniform when I'm using it. But this one is actually a blend of, I believe, cotton and linen and viscose maybe. So I found that it was actually really comfortable to work with. Sometimes it would be a little bit splitty if I was trying to, you know, knit super fast without looking at my work really. Sometimes I'd just have to go double check and make sure that I didn't kind of drop part of the fibers, because especially because I think the linen strands that are woven in there have kind of a different texture than the cottony stuff. So just had to keep an eye on it as I was working, but overall I did like it a lot. And I did do a couple modifications to this. I just put an extra round of increases towards the bottom to make it a little bit more bell sleeve than the base version is. It's not very extreme, but I just kind of wanted to make it look a little bit more open at the bottom. And I also just made the sleeves longer, as per usual that I do with pretty much everything I make at this point. I've come to expect that. But I do really like it. I wasn't sure how I would feel about the kind of raw hem look, if that makes sense, kind of like the way it rolls up at the end, because I'm not usually drawn to those kinds of details in knitting patterns, but I actually do really like it a lot, and I think it kind of adds a nice simple touch to it. So I would definitely make another one of these. I did make this in a size small, and that was what my size was according to the sizing chart from My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I also was on gauge pretty much when I kind of checked partway through my project to see how I was going, but it doesn't really have as much negative ease as I expected there to be. So if I did ever make another one of these, I would probably opt to do an extra small instead of a small. But either way, I still do really like it a lot, and it's really comfy for the warmer weather. So happy with this one. Now for kind of a super behemoth project that I finally finished. I finished my folklore cardigan, and I absolutely love this. I think it's totally perfect. I used the folklore cardigan pattern by Amy Gunderson for this, and I decided to go for a little bit more of an oversized look just in case. So I made all of the body panels, so the front or the two front ones and the back panel, in a size medium, and I actually sized up to a size large for the sleeves, just because a couple of people had noted on Ravelry that the sleeves were a little bit disproportionately skinny or more narrow compared to the way that the body was kind of oversized and fitting. So I wanted to do that. I did make the sleeves longer like I usually do, but I actually made them quite long. There's something about the yarn I used, which is Drops Daisy. I used the off-white color and black that I think it is a superwash yarn, if I'm not mistaken, or at least it's a very refined kind of merino wool. So I wasn't expecting the sleeves to really have that kind of weight and drape and grow that much after just wearing it. Like, I feel like after I just blocked it and was wearing it in the first place, I was like, okay, yeah, the sleeve length is perfect. But the more I kept wearing it, the more just the weight of the garment kept dragging it down. And then the sleeves got a little bit longer. So usually when I wear it, I do just kind of cuff it up like this. And then if I'm super cold, I can just flip it back down like that to kind of cover my wrists, like this kind of. But I do think it looks fine when it's cuffed up. So I don't really mind that at all. I have been wearing this quite regularly since I finished it, so it is pilling slightly, which I think a lot of people have mentioned happens with Drops Daisy a little bit. If you can see, this is the underside of it, so this is the wrong side. So this is kind of the part that brushes up against like my shirt and the bottom of my pants when I'm wearing it. So it has probably the most friction, but even though it is pilling a little bit, I find that the pills aren't like huge, distracting kind of pills. It's just kind of that fuzzy, halo-y kind of look that is existing throughout the rest of the garment. So I feel like it doesn't really look like it's super old or worn out or anything, which is really nice. And the yarn itself is very soft and drapey. I haven't used merino wool all that much for any other garments that I've made, so I was really surprised working with this that this is actually wool, and it's like not, you know, some weird blend with something to make it seem more soft than it actually is. And overall, yeah, this pattern was great to use. The yarn was great to use. I definitely think it might be a little bit more drapey and heavy than expected for other kinds of projects, but I feel like for a big oversized cozy cardigan like this, that was kind of exactly the kind of fabric texture I was looking for anyway, so I was really happy that I ended up choosing this one. And apart from those modifications, I also changed a little bit of the cabling section on the front panels. So the only bit I changed was kind of like right here, not to give anything up about the pattern or anything to give spoilers, but essentially there was just a different way noted for you to kind of decrease out this larger cable and then have it taper into the rest. And I have a little comparison picture of the different versions that I made. I essentially knitted up all of one panel using the way it was mentioned in the pattern, and I didn't really like the way it looked a ton. I thought that it kind of wasn't exactly as refined as I thought, so I just kind of like YOLO'd it and decreased out the cable in pattern instead to kind of make it look a little bit less awkward as it was being removed, because, you know, it's kind of hard to continue doing like a cable while you're like, I guess, decreasing over it so that that space doesn't exist anymore, because you can't really keep cabling with the same frequency and thickness of cable. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I just kind of like trial and error and guessed it until it worked. And that was kind of a nice thing about how this is knit up in panels, was that normally if I had wanted to fix something that early on in the project and I had gone through all the rest of it, it would be a huge pain to have to unravel everything and then just to fix that one small thing. But since there were several different panels that I was working with this, it wasn't as much of a burden to kind of take some of it away and then redo a little bit, because it's all just in little sections that get seamed together at the end. And I definitely think that it being a seamed pattern did help with the drapiness of the fabric for this, and it kind of gave it like a little bit more structure, which was nice, and I like that a lot too. Another thing that I did edit about this pattern, for those that are curious, is that at the very start, it is a bottom-up pattern, so when you're doing these two little stripes of your contrasting color and then you have the big diamond motif in the center back, I did an extra round of just ribbing again with the white or off-white color, just because the way that it kind of looks when you have the pearl bumps all going with the contrast color, it didn't look as clean as if there was like another row of just ribbing again with the off-white color again. So that was just kind of to make it look a little bit more refined. And then I did that exact same thing on like the sleeves, because the sleeves also have the same diamond pattern, so it just added like one extra row to kind of make it look a bit more seamless. But overall, I love this so much, and I wore it so much before it got warm, and I still wear it as kind of like a layering piece now that it's May. So super happy with it. And if anyone's looking for a nice Taylor Swift cardigan to make to kind of replace the merchandise ones, or to make something that's your own colorway or something, if you're interested in that, I do really recommend the Amy Gunderson pattern. And I think it's kind of interesting now that the Tortured Poets Department cardigan has also kind of been released and is its own thing, because the cables and everything on that one seem to be quite different than this one. So I would really love to see if anyone has tried making their own Tortured Poets style knitted, hand knit cardigan yet. But as for me, I am definitely not going to be making one of those anytime soon, because this already took me so long, and I don't think my fingers can deal with doing like moss stitch again for that much time without going crazy. So yeah, but I'm so glad I finally finished this. The next finished object I have is quite small. I have this bandana. It's called the Romanticist bandana, and I essentially just kind of made this as a bit of a stash buster, although honestly it used so little yarn that it didn't really bust much of my stash, but I did use up some of it, I suppose. And it's basically just this simple triangular bandana with little ties to tie it up and this eyelet pattern throughout the whole thing. And when you wear it, it does pretty much cover a good amount of your hair like that, so it's not like too tiny. And I made this using the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in cream that I had left from the Anchors tee that I made last summer. So I only barely dipped into the last ball that I bought for that one, and I was kind of wondering what kind of project I could make using a silk yarn that uses less than a ball, a 50-gram ball of the yarn, because I feel like if you have a small 50-gram ball of a wool of some sort or an alpaca, you can make like a little Sophie scarf or a little fingerless gloves or something, and it's like a little accessory in that way. But I didn't really know what else to do with this, but I actually really love this, and I think it's super cute and dainty and summery. It feels very luxurious because it's using the pure silk. You could still do this using like a cotton or a wool or something instead as well, but it's just such a kind of nice little cottagecore staple kind of thing. And especially because of this silk yarn, at first it was kind of like flipping up, like curling up like this on the bottom, because of, you know, it's just kind of stockinette. But after blocking it, the drape is really nice. So honestly, I really do love this, and it was an unexpected hit that I did, and it only took like a few hours to knit up, honestly. I feel like I just put a couple episodes of House on and then it was already done. So yeah, I highly recommend if anyone is looking for like a summer accessory to bust some of their kind of summery yarn from their stash, then I do really like this one. So for my next couple of finished objects, I'm not sure how interested people are in hearing about this kind of stuff because it's not my knitting stuff, but I do have some sewing projects that I recently finished now that it's kind of, you know, getting into warmer weather and you can make some nice clothes pretty quick with a sewing machine. So I'll be pretty quick with these because I don't even really know what I'll be mentioning because I can't really talk about the yarn or pattern used for some of them. But I picked up some nice double cotton gauze fabric from my local fabric store, and I made this navy kind of summery button down overshirt kind of shirt. And this was the first time that I actually sewed these kind of like sleeve openings with the button and everything. So it was kind of interesting to have a bit of a challenge and in that department with the techniques and kind of see how I could make things look as professional as possible. So it was a fun project for sure, and this fabric was really easy to work with for the most part. It didn't like jam my machine or anything, and I didn't have any issues with it like puckering weirdly. So overall it was really good to work with. And because it's kind of got this this puckery, like textured waffly kind of look, I feel like you don't have to worry about it getting like wrinkled or weird or anything because it kind of has that crepey texture to it anyway. So it's really nice to casually just throw on top of something, especially because sometimes I don't have like sunscreen in my bag or whatever, and I want to have something to put on just so I don't get sunburned if I'm out on like a patio or something. So that was what I was getting this for. And I did actually use a pattern for this one. This is the pattern that I used. It is just a Simplicity men's workwear shirt. I have no idea what size this even is, honestly. It says men neck 6.5, chest 44. So I'm assuming those are the like inch measurements of around the neck and the chest, but I don't know whether that is a relatively small or large man size. I have kind of altered this pattern a bit because I'm not a man. So I make the sleeves a little bit shorter, and I make the body a little bit shorter as well. And even so, it still goes like past my butt a little bit. So that kind of helps save on some of the extra fabric that I don't have to buy as well. Yeah, I actually got this pattern from a free store while I was camping one time. They just kind of, I don't really know where the stuff from the free store comes from. It's kind of just like a thrift store, but random odds and ends that you can go buy and pick up if you're in the need for something. And I guess it's better than these clothes or magazines, or they had patterns like this going to the landfill. And I feel like this is probably from the 60s or something. Like, it's kind of a vintage look, and you know, it's a classic fit, and who doesn't need a button-down shirt sometimes? So honestly, I've made 2 shirts out of this so far, and for the low price of $0 from the once 75 Canadian cents that this was, I feel like it's a pretty good deal. So yeah, highly recommend if anyone needs a classic button-down shirt pattern for sewing. The next sewing final project that I have is these also double gauze fabric pants. And they're just kind of these like sweatpants, you know, summery, drapey kind of things going on. They're not bunched at the hem or anything. It's just normal on the hem, wide leg pants. I was kind of inspired by all of the linen pants that they have right now at like Brandy Melville, and I wanted to kind of make my own. So I just took one of the pants from there that I do own, and I just took some parchment paper from the kitchen and I traced around the shape of it and made a copy of them pretty much. So they've got pockets, they've got a drawstring and an elastic in the waist, so that kind of makes it a little bit easier too. And overall, this was super simple, super easy. It took like probably 2 or 3 hours altogether to make, so a lot faster than knitting and crocheting, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. So it'll be nice for like kind of summer weather to have some more breezy pants up in here. And I love the kind of pinstripe look of them. It's kind of interesting how the texture of the fabric itself makes it look a bit like it's like wavy, but I think that it's kind of a fun crinkly look to it. So I also do really like these, and they're super comfy. The last one of my finished objects that I will be sharing with you guys is kind of like a sad tale, because I don't really know what the future is for this, but it is my Cami number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, using the Kremke Morning Salutation yarn, I believe. And it's in the shade 13. I remember because it's just giving bad luck of some kind, but I really do like this pattern. The fabric that I made for this is also nice. It has nice drape to it. It's a little bit dense, so it's kind of heavy to the touch, but my issue is just that I don't like the fit of this. I've tried it on, I've blocked it and everything, so this is like final product, except for this one end that I haven't woven in yet. But I find that I didn't use a merino wool like the pattern recommends. I know that's on me, but I sized down for it and everything, and I was really wanting to make sure, and I sized down on the needles, that I could kind of keep that form-fitting look in it, but especially just kind of after the top up until here, it fits quite well, but then in the rest of the body, it just flares out in a way that I don't think is really flattering for the fit. I thought maybe it would get better once I had blocked it and kind of it was gaining its shape again, and especially like the bottom kind of folded hem that it has tends to flare out weirdly when I wear it. And I'm not sure if I want to try and fix it by maybe just running like a really skinny elastic inside here and seeing if that can kind of help keep it a bit tighter. But honestly, just the whole fabric in general is a little bit looser than I expected, so I might just frog up to like near the armpit and then work some covert decreases in there to kind of make it a little bit more form-fitting for the rest of the body. But I don't really know what I'm going to do with this, and I'm kind of bummed out about the project as a whole, so I'm not really in the mental capacity to be frogging like a ton of really thin fingering weight work that I've done. So right now you can see how creased this is. I don't really wear this, and it's just been folded up in my closet looking pretty instead of being worn. So eventually I'll deal with this kind of mishap, but right now this is kind of my one ongoing fail that I still have not been able to escape. I feel like I've been mentioning this project since my very first video of all my projects, so that kind of goes to show how it has been haunting me for months. So one day this will be a happy story, just not today. So those were all of my finished objects. I do have a couple of whips that I have going on still. I know that was a lot to get through already, but I have pretty much finished a lot in the meantime, but I only have a few things that are ongoing. So the first of which is a tank top that I'm making. This is the Sabai top by Paula M. Strict, and I'm making this again with drops Belle, and this is in the color Zinc. And it's just kind of like a nice boat neck look. And then I only just recently joined the front and back together, and then I'm just going to be knitting this to whatever length I want, and then kind of doing the same ribbing look on the bottom hem. There is an option in the pattern to do this kind of without the little ribbing detail on the top, which I did consider doing, but then I feel like since the blouse number 1 that I just did also has that look where it's like a wide boat neck without any kind of texture towards the hem, I wanted to do something that was a little bit different, especially because it's also using the same yarn. It is drops Belle. So if I do ever make another one of these, I think I would choose to do it without the ribbing just to kind of see what that looks like. But I don't really know for sure whether I would or not yet, because obviously I've not done it and I don't really know how it fits. But I do like these kinds of silhouettes for tops, especially kind of summer tops. I feel like it's a way to do summer knitting that works very well for the kind of fabric textures that you get from knitting. I think maybe that's an issue that I'm having with my cami number 9, is just that I don't know how to kind of get that stretchy jersey type of material out of my knitting, but having like a drapey, more free-flowing fabric from your knitting is easier to do, for me at least. So I'm looking forward to how this looks, and hopefully it'll be a happy tank top story that I can finally share. My next whip is actually a crochet project, so I'm hitting all of the big 3 in this video, I suppose, knitting and crochet and sewing. So this is the front panel for my, I think it's called the 70s inspired crochet top. I think that's what it's called. This was just a pattern that I found on Etsy with my friends. We were doing kind of like a bit of a crochet along for this, so it's been kind of nice to be looking forward to having a matching top and matching project with a bunch of my friends who I've helped show them how to crochet, and hopefully I'll be able to show them how to knit soon once we get over the stress of having to hold 2 needles instead of 1 hook. So I don't know, it's just a really fun project to be doing with my friends and to kind of remind me of the community that I find with all of my hobbies and stuff. So it's a very simple, basically just have 2 panels using this motif that it describes in the pattern, and you basically just, it's another kind of straight across neckline. You sew them together and then you put like a scalloping edge on the side, and this is where I'm at kind of with my second panel for the back. So still got a ways to go, but it's pretty quick going because it's mostly just using double crochet, and it is easy to stick in your bag because you only need to bring 1 panel with you at a time. And in terms of the yarn, I'm just using drops Safran in the color Red Clay. So this is honestly quite a nice soft drapey cotton yarn. The only other 100% cotton yarns that I've really used were the ones that you can get from like Michael's that feel very crunchy and kind of like dishcloth material-y. So I was really pleasantly surprised when this came in, and it does feel very soft. I'm not sure if it would be kind of the thing that I would want to make sweaters or anything out of, but in terms of summer knits for sure, I do really like this one. And I don't think that it's mercerized, so it doesn't have that like shiny look, which is mostly just a matter of preference. But for me, I didn't really want my final project to be super shiny and have that luster to it, at least for this one. And the strands themselves are woven together quite well, so I don't have any issues with this one splitting or anything, which is nice compared to the stuff I've been knitting with the Drops Belle. I have kind of had to keep an eye on making sure I don't go through like the wrong strand in my stitch or anything. So yeah, this has been really fun to work on too, and it'll be nice to match when we're all done, so I'm excited for that. And I guess I'll just rapid fire through some of the recent acquisitions I have, or quote unquote recent, that I've kind of piled up over the last couple of months. This is kind of like a multi-skein cotton yarn from Schoppel. It's called the Zauberperlen cotton, and it's just a 100% cotton, and it just kind of has a gradient from this white all the way with like increasing amounts of pink into this more dark pink at the end. So I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to make with this. I've kind of been letting it sit in my stash for a while because I'm obviously going to make some kind of like gradient tank top or something with this, I think. So I'm just kind of trying to find a pattern that would look cute with this, that would kind of play to the strengths of the gradient of colors. And I'm not really sure if I'm going to be like fading the skeins either for like while I'm transitioning, because there's there's 7 different skeins in here technically. So to kind of make it like as gradient as possible, am I going to be like alternating skeins for a few rows so that the transition is super subtle or something? I'm not sure. So because of all of these unanswered questions, I've just been chilling with this in my stash for a while, and if you guys have any pattern recommendations for maybe a summer top that would be nice with this, then please let me know. I do think that this is only 100 grams, so I'm not really sure what I would be able to make out of it. And if I can't make like a tank top or anything, maybe I would just be able to make like a little scarf or an accessory, like a bandana like that or something. So I'm not sure. Hopefully something cute will come. The next yarn acquisition that I have is this nice kind of denim color alpaca yarn. And this is a 100% alpaca, which is hand spun, hand dyed, I believe, from a farmer's market that I went to in Waterloo when I was out on a trip. So it's from a spinner called Serenity Cerise, and there they have like all different kinds of alpaca products. Essentially, they had different kinds of alpaca grades within different types of alpaca. I didn't really understand. There was so much alpaca stuff going on, but they basically had some really soft cerise and some other kind of more hard-wearing, like typical alpaca yarns that you would see. This one is kind of like a medium mix where it's got some good like long fibers to it, but it's also got kind of like a bit of a fuzzy halo. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing with this. But I am very excited for some kind of maybe a nice little scarf project or something once the weather is getting cooler again in the fall. It's very squishy, and the spin itself of the plies, I think it's a 2-ply spun together, so something that will kind of let the nice texture of this stand out would be really nice. And it's always just really nice being able to talk to the people that spin the yarn that they're selling and how they dye it and everything. I think this was from a custom dye request that the spinner had received, and I was talking to her about the last special skein of yarn, because whenever I go somewhere that has like a farmer's market or something, I like to buy like a one special skein of yarn as like a memory of the place. And it was from the other side of the country, and I was mentioning the woman that I knew from that farmer's market, and she says, "Oh yeah, I know her," which was so crazy to me because you kind of couldn't get any farther apart in the country than those two places. But still, I guess spinning is such a small community and hand dyeing is such a small community that everyone's super close. So I thought that was super cool and kind of made me feel like it's a small world. And yeah, it was super fun. So not sure what I'm going to be making with that. I've kind of done a little start swatch of the Turtle Dove shawl by Sari Nordland, but I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with this pattern for this skein just because it's such a dark color. I'm not sure how well you can see the actual motifs that are on there. So I've only started like a tiny little bit, and I'm kind of gonna let it sit like this and see if I want to change my mind and turn it into something else. But for now, that's on the back burner, and it'll be for another time. I guess while we're talking about acquisitions, I also got this fabric, which is kind of like a dark gray eyelet kind of fabric from my local fabric store. As you can see, I've already cut this out, and I'm trying to turn it into a bit of like a summer tank top, like cottagey kind of button-up shirt of some sort. So not sure how this is going to go. My sewing machine was kind of disagreeing with the eyelet kind of design going on in here, so I'm kind of putting this project on hold for now as well. And I also got this medium blue rayon fabric with this kind of lustrous dots on it. It's not exactly polka dots, but kind of just like texture-y thing. I have enough to make maybe a dress or like a long skirt out of this. I'm going to kind of see what is speaking to me in that. And I also have like a matching zipper, so whatever I choose, I'll be able to fasten it up nicely. But for now, this is also just being in stash, and it'll turn into something nice and summery sometime soon. So that was a lot to update on because it's been so long since I last recorded anything, but I hope you guys liked learning about some of the stuff that I finished since last time. I know a lot of those finished objects were things no one had ever even seen me talk about before because I started them and finished them all in one go since I last recorded anything, but it was just kind of nice to keep you guys updated, especially with it becoming warmer weather out now, kind of what my projects are looking like. And if anyone has any recommendations for kind of stuff to do, especially with like my pink cotton yarn that I got, I'd love to hear it. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!